I was actually in a gathering, I'm remembering, in Oman, Sultanate Oman. I was there for a program, and it was a program of about 500 attendees. It was by invitation only, and most of the people attending were scholars. I was one of the few non-scholars there. And when the program began, our ustad, our teacher, it was a Dawra of Quran. We were going to do i'tikaf in the masjid. We're going to live in the masjid for a whole week. We're going to study Quran all day. That's what we were going to do, right? And he had prerequisites in the beginning. And he said something so powerful that I want to share with you. He said that there are people here that are scholars. There are people here that are judges in Sharia court, meaning they're very high level of scholar. There are people here that have written books on Islam. There are people that are muhaddithin. There are people that are scholars of tafsir, etc., etc. But for this week, all of that you have with you is here. But this week is not about here. It's about here. And it doesn't matter how much you learn here. We will come to the Quran like we've never studied it before. And we're just trying. We have to realize there are walls between us, our hearts, and the Quran. And this week, we're just going to try to break those walls between ourselves and the Quran. That's what we're going to try to do. And this was actually about attitude, because attitudes are formed in the heart, right? And we had conditions. There were requirements, and part of the requirement was you cannot tell what your qualifications are, or what you do for a living, or what your career is. We knew each other's names. We knew where we were from, but we knew nothing more about it. I don't know if the person I'm talking to is a taxi driver, or one of them actually owned a couple of camels. He was a camel driver. And then a couple of them were like judges, and you couldn't tell because they were not allowed to say anything more about themselves. All we were doing was, how did this ayah impact your heart? That's all. That's all we did for a week. How did this ayah impact your heart? Let's recite this ayah together. Now let's discuss what we learned. But even when we discussed what we learned, we weren't allowed to quote a tafsir. We weren't allowed to discuss the i'rab of it or the ikhtilafat, the differences of opinion among the scholars. We weren't having an academic discussion. We were just discussing, what does it do for my heart? What does this make me feel? How does this bring me closer to Allah? So I tell you, one of the most incredible experiences of my life, this happened maybe 2-3 years ago. And you know what happened? I've been studying Quran since like 1999. And I felt like this was the first time I was studying the Quran. That's what I felt like. And you know what that told me? It doesn't matter how much you know or don't know. That does not matter. What matters is you've made a decision to come to the word of Allah and let your heart feel the word of Allah. That's what matters.